If you're new to 3D, then you're probably also new to the concept of file dependencies. Some programs, like for example Microsoft Word, don't rely on dependencies. When you import an image into a Word document, that image is actually stored inside the Word document. It's embedded in the document. So when you save your doc or docx file, it includes image data as well. Well, 3D programs don't work that way. 3D programs and other programs like editing software, for example, rely upon links to external files. If you open up a Maya scene, if your dependent files or if your linked files are not where they're supposed to be, or if Maya doesn't know where they are, then they won't get loaded and your scene will not fully load. It'll be broken. And this is a really common issue that happens a lot, especially with new users, but it does happen even to people who've been working with 3D for a long time. Basically, you have to always be on top of this. You have to make sure that every time you use Maya, you know what your current project is. And a project is a series of special folders that store all different types of data, like images or sounds and so on. So creating a project folder or setting to an existing project folder is the very first thing you need to do every time you sit down in front of your computer to use Maya. And this is not optional. It's absolutely required, and if you don't do it, it's almost certain that you're going to lose your work. Okay, so don't let it happen to you. Let's look at creating a new project. We can do that from the File menu here. File, Project Window. And what that's going to do is show me what the current project is. My current project is the default one that's just created for me when Maya is installed. And it's located under the current user's Documents Maya projects. So if I save a file out of Maya now, it'll get stored in Documents Maya projects scenes right here. So that's where it's going to look to open scenes, and it's where it's going to look to save scenes. I'm going to create a new project for this lesson. Click on the button that says New. Let's give it a name, and I'll call it Revolve Maya Project. I do like to put the words Maya Project in the name of the folder. That way I know it's something special. It's just not an ordinary folder that's got like pictures of my grandma or something. It's a Maya project that's very special and very specific and has all of these very important subfolders within it. Additionally, you'll notice that I put an underscore instead of a white space. This is important as well. If you use white spaces anywhere in Maya, you're playing with fire. Maya was never designed for white spaces. Objects cannot have white spaces in their names, and ideally you shouldn't have white spaces in the names of your folder or really anywhere in the path to that folder. And you'll see in this case I don't have any white spaces anywhere here in this path, nor in the project folder name. If you do have white spaces, you're going to have problems. Certain features will actually break, and you won't even know what's going on. You'll see an error message, and it'll be cryptic, and you'll be scratching your head going, oh, why am I getting an error message? And it'll take you forever to figure out that the problem is that you've got a white space somewhere in the path to that project. So again, don't let it happen to you. Don't use white spaces anywhere in Maya. Always use an underscore or maybe a dash or something, but underscore is the standard thing. All right, so I don't need to change anything here. I just click Accept. And now two things have happened. That series of folders has been created for me, and now Maya is pointed at that project. So that's now the home base for all assets. And let's take a look at it. I'm going to minimize Maya and go into the current user, Documents, Maya, Projects. And now you'll see I've got two here, the default and then Revolve Maya Project, the one that I just created. And I can open that up and look at it. And these are all of the asset folders. So when I save a scene out of Maya, it'll go into scenes. When I load an image onto a texture, onto a material, it needs to be in source images first. When I render out, when I create images, they'll go into images, and so on. Okay, so that's how we create a project. If we want to set back to a different project, then it's a simple matter. I'll reopen Maya. If I want to go back to that default project, I can go to File, Set Project, and then just choose it. I don't need to drill down inside it. Just select the top level or root of the project folder and click Set. And now if, for example, I choose File Open Scene, in the Open Scene dialog, it takes me directly to project's default scenes. And if it doesn't take me there, I can always click over here on Scenes, and it'll take me to that folder. Okay, I'm actually going to set it back to the Revolve Maya project. And I can do that by going to File, Set Project. But because I just created it, it's also possibly going to be in this Recent Projects. So here's Recent Projects. So it is in fact there. So I can choose it. So that's just a shortcut. Now, of course, you'll need to have many projects on your hard drive or your network. I do recommend working directly off of an internal fixed drive on your computer and not off an external drive or a network drive, unless you're at some facility that's got super blazingly fast network with fiber connections and stuff. But really, you need to be working off of your local computer's internal hard drive. Otherwise, you're going to have serious performance issues. So my Documents folder, either on Windows or the Mac, is going to be on the local drive by default. Okay, now I know we've done a lot of sort of setup here, and we haven't even used the program here, but that is the way Maya works. You have to have all of these things lined up before you even begin to think about building something. If you haven't done all of this work in advance, then you're going to have problems, and you're going to be, once again, left scratching your head going, what did I do wrong? Just make sure that every time you use Maya, you check in on what your current project is, and either create a new one or set to an existing one. All right, now let's look at the program itself. We'll play around a little bit here. I'll create an object, and we'll go up into the Create menu, and go to Polygon Primitives, Cube. And I want to click and hold the mouse and drag it out in this perspective window here. And I'm creating the footprint of the cube. And then release the mouse. And then click on it again in the center of that plane. And then drag upward to set the height. And if your finger slips and you do this wrong, you'll create a corrupted cube. And you'll never be able to change its height. So once again, create Polygon Primitives Cube. Click and hold the mouse. Drag it out. Then release, and then click and hold again and drag up. Okay, so I've got a couple objects in here, and we can move them around. And movement in 3D is known as transforms or transformations. And those tools are found here on this toolbar. We've got the Move tool, the Rotate tool, and the Scale tool. I can click on Move and then select an object, and you'll see I have this Move Manipulator, or Gizmo. And that allows me to change the position of the object in 3 dimensions. I can also rotate, grab the Rotate tool. And when the Rotate tool is active, I'll see the Rotate Manipulator. And I can click on one of these circles and turn the object in various directions. Then we've also got the Scale tool. Now I don't actually recommend using the Scale tool at this point. We can use that to stretch an object and change its shape, and you can see these values change over here. Scale X, Y, Z. I've scaled it in Y. Well, actually, your best practice is to have a scale of 1 in all 3 dimensions. In this area called the channel box, I can type in values. So for example, I can click here on Scale Y and type in a value of 1 and press Enter. And that restores it back to default scale. The best way to change the shape of a primitive like this one is to use its attributes. Attributes are properties of an object's node. A node is kind of like a building block of an object. And an object in Maya usually has at least 2 nodes. It'll have a shape and it'll have a transform node. This is the transform node here. But I can go down here into Shapes, Inputs, and click on Polycube 1. And that actually opens up the cube's creation attributes. And I can actually change things in here. Like I can set the height directly to 10, and it's in centimeters by default. So that's a better way, in fact, to change the size of a simple primitive like this, instead of scaling, because scaling is going to get you into trouble if you're not careful. I can go back to the transforms here and, for example, reset the rotation. So I can click and drag the mouse across Rotate X, Y, and Z, and all 3 are selected. And I can type in a 0 and press Enter, and I've restored it back to default rotations. Okay, so those are transforms. You're going to want to memorize the transform hotkeys. W is move or position or translate in CG speak. So W is translate or move. E is rotate. R is scale. And I can undo that. Just press the Z key to undo. You can use Control Z, but just plain ordinary Z is fine. And then finally, if you want to just use the select tool, the shortcut for that is Q. So I can select things without moving or rotating them. Very good. Then finally, the last basic thing we want to look at here is viewport navigation. How to change your point of view in the viewports. And there are commands for that in the view menu here, but it's a waste of time to go into the menu every 2 seconds to change your point of view. You want to just use the hotkeys. And in Maya, it's all about the Alt key or Option key. So I can hold down Alt and use middle mouse, and I can change the position of the camera and just move left to right and up and down. I can use Alt and left mouse click, and I can tumble around the scene. Or I can use Alt and right mouse click, and I can move forward and back, or dolly. So it goes without saying that you have to have a 3-button mouse, otherwise Maya will not work. And if you're on the Mac, you've got extra problems because there is no Apple mouse that actually has 3 working buttons. So to use Maya on the Mac, you have to buy just a cheap Logitech mouse, and you have to also have your old mouse installed at the same time so you can change the options. You have to make sure that you've set the left button to be primary button, the right button to be secondary button, and the middle button to be button 3 in your system preferences on the Mac. Okay, without those 3 buttons working, you cannot use Maya. So you absolutely have to have a 3-button mouse, and it has to be set up properly in your system preferences. On Windows, it's not a problem. You just plug in your mouse and it works. But on the Mac, you've got extra headaches. And actually, you'll find that throughout Maya on the Mac, that you're going to have extra stuff that you need to sort out and worry about that you don't have to worry about on Windows.